Welcome to America Current Affairs, where we break down the biggest stories you need to know. And wow, do we have a big one today. A diplomatic firestorm is blowing up in the Arctic, and it is getting intense. Let's get right into it.
So where did this all kick off? Right here, with this one really blunt comment from President Trump. He basically just dismissed Denmark's entire ability to defend Greenland, saying, and I quote, "2 dog sleds won't do it." I mean, just a handful of words and boom, you've got this incredibly tense, confrontational vibe sending shockwaves all the way across the Atlantic.
And that tension? Well, it just boiled over. Literally yesterday, you had these super high-stakes emergency talks happening in DC, and they didn't just fail, no, they completely collapsed. In less than an hour, it was a total flameout, and now everyone's looking around asking, wait, how on earth did we get here?
All right, so let's unpack this. How did this whole deal turn so sour so fast? Well, it all started with what everyone was just casually calling a real estate deal. But believe me, it has morphed into something way more intense. Okay, so here's the play-by-play of the diplomatic breakdown. First, you have President Trump calling Denmark's resistance to a US takeover unacceptable. That leads to Vice President JD Vance hosting this emergency meeting with Danish ministers. But like we said, the talks just end abruptly. No agreement, nothing. And now, the US is threatening to slap very high tariffs on Danish goods. You can imagine how that went over. Denmark's Prime Minister, Mette Frederiksen, came out and called the entire situation historically unheard of. I mean, we're talking about a full-blown crisis between two countries that have been allies for a very long time. Okay, so this begs the big question, right? Why this giant island? What is it about Greenland that's so incredibly important? And let me tell you, the answer is way more than just a big chunk of land on a map. Okay, it really all kicks off with military strategy. There's this thing called the GIUK Gap. Just think of it like a giant naval doorway to the North Atlantic. For literally centuries, military strategists have known that if you control this gap, the space between Greenland, Iceland, and the UK, you basically control who gets into North America. It is a critical choke point. And Greenland, it's the massive northern gatekeeper. And it's not just one thing. Look at all the reasons this is such a prize for the US. From a military perspective, Greenland is basically an unsinkable aircraft carrier right there in the Arctic. It's also home to the Patufic space base, which is absolutely vital for giving us early warnings on missiles and for tracking satellites. But it's not just about defense anymore. You see, as all that Arctic ice melts, brand new shipping routes are opening up, and Greenland is sitting right there, prime real estate. And then there's what's under the ice. We're talking an estimated 50 billion barrels of oil and gas. Plus, get this, the world's biggest deposits of rare earth elements outside of China. You know, all the stuff we need for our phones, our computers, our electric cars. It's a treasure trove. But here is where the story takes a fascinating turn. This whole obsession with Greenland, it might feel like it came out of nowhere, but it is not new at all. Not even close. This is just the latest chapter in a pursuit that goes back more than 150 years. Just look at this timeline. The US first kicked the tires on buying Greenland way back in 1867. That's right after they bought Alaska. Then, jump forward to 1946, right after World War II. The US secretly offered Denmark $100 million in solid gold for the island. The Danes said no thanks. Then, of course, you have 2019, when President Trump's first offer was basically laughed out of the room, called absurd. But now, in his second term, nobody's laughing. It's become a major foreign policy goal. So you have to wonder, right? How did we go from this old American dream to this really aggressive modern-day demand? Well, the whole approach has just completely shifted. And this chart really shows you everything. Back in his first term, President Trump framed this as essentially a real estate deal, you know, a casual idea. But now, it's being called an absolute necessity for national security. It's not just talk anymore. Now it's being backed up by actual legislation and some pretty serious economic threats. The whole game has changed. And make no mistake, this is a very methodical pressure campaign. Step 1, the administration starts publicly questioning whether Denmark even has a legal right to Greenland. Step 2, they introduce bills in Congress like the Make Greenland Great Again Act to try and put this whole idea into law. Step 3, the threats of those targeted tariffs on big Danish companies. And the very latest move? Appointing a special envoy whose whole job is specifically to handle the annexation of the territory. It's a full court press from every angle. So all of that, it brings us right back to where we are today. A super tense, high-stakes showdown in the Arctic that has massive implications for the entire world.
Okay, so what's the price tag on a place like Greenland? Well, honestly, nobody seems to agree. The estimates are just all over the place, which really tells you how huge the stakes are. Some reports say tens of billions. But others, when they factor in all those resources, are talking over $1 trillion. That is a massive range. And it just goes to show you that nobody really has a clue what the final number could even be.
But you know, in all this talk about money and strategy, there's one group of people who have a very clear opinion. The 57,000 people who actually call Greenland home. A recent poll shows that a staggering 85% of Greenlanders completely reject a US takeover. Their message has been consistent and clear. Greenland is not for sale, and its future is for them to decide, not for Washington or Copenhagen.
And this is where the stakes get raised to the absolute maximum. Denmark's prime minister didn't mince words. She put it in the starkest terms you can imagine. A forcible American takeover of Greenland, she said, would mean the end of NATO. Think about that. If one member of the alliance tries to take the territory of another, the entire 75-year-old military alliance that has kept the peace could just collapse. That is the ultimate red line from a key American ally.
So, that leaves us with one heck of a final question, doesn't it? With one of the most important alliances in modern history hanging in the balance, is this really just about owning an island anymore? Or are we watching an attempt to fundamentally redraw the map of the world? For more explainers that really cut through all the noise, make sure you subscribe to American Current Affairs.